Welcome to the Alan Berry Reports TV. I'm your host, Alan Berry Labucan, from AlanBerryReports.com. Today we got a new installment of our shows that we started back in the summertime, doing interviews with management from resource companies. And on today's show, we have Scott Weeks, who is the president of Redstar Gold Corp, is going to come on. He's going to talk to us about two of their key projects. They've got, they're gold focused. One is in Alaska, the other is in Red Lake, Ontario. Before getting started, I always like to do the disclosure. First, we are shareholders of the company. We also offer consulting services to the company. They're one of the banner sponsors on our website as well, and they've been one of the featured companies in our email newsletter. So now that we got that out of the way, Scott, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me, Al.
We really appreciate it. Gives our audience a chance to learn about companies, and you guys have Redstar has a real great group of properties there, and wanted to talk about those today.
Yeah, Al, we're pretty excited. I think this is really a watershed year for the company. We've been, actively working on our project in Red Lake, and this year has been, by far our best and most consistent results out of Red Lake. And then just recently with the addition of this Alaska project, which we think is a potentially game changer for the company.
I see. Well, I'm open to talk about either ones, or I want to talk about both of them actually. Which one we talk about first, not really a big deal. How about we start out with the Red Lake stuff?
Sure, Al.
What I was looking for, Scott, is maybe could you give us an overview of the project and where it is and sort of what's happened to get us to where we are today with the project?
Sure. Our project in Red Lake is called the Newman-Todd Project, and it sits in the west end. It's about 20 kilometers west of the main mines in the Red Lake camp. It's in an area of the Red Lake camp that has seen far less exploration than the main part of the camp. But what we have is a new gold trend for the Red Lake area. It's a project that had some work done on it in the 80s. We acquired it in about 2004. And we did a number of small drill campaigns on it, and we began to realize that this thing had some real size potential. Of all the work that we did in the Red Lake camp, Newman-Todd is the only place where we really saw sort of mine-scale alteration and structures. The types of systems that we could point to and say these look very similar to the main mines. And this last winter, we did a deal with Confederation Minerals, who came into the project. They can earn a 50% interest in the project by spending $5 million and an extra 20% interest by producing a PEA. We did that deal late last year, and really what we were looking for is we were looking for a company that was going to spend a significant amount of money on the project and be very aggressive in exploring it. And they've been very good partners for us.
Well, that's for sure. Since 2011, it's been pretty aggressive drilling on the project, and to follow up on that past work that was done, and it's been a slew of good news out of that drill campaign.
It has. The work that we had done on it before that, we really felt had identified a new structural zone that we could follow for a couple of kilometers. We had a few holes into it that had some, in some cases, quite spectacular gold numbers, up to a couple of ounces. But we really felt that to advance it, it really needed a big program and a very aggressive exploration program. And we started this year with one drill and then went to two drills in the spring, and there's been two drills active on the project ever since that. And we'll keep two drills active on the project probably until the middle of December or so, and then start back up in January.
Now, when you say it needed a big program, is that has to do with the size of the geological structure and what you're focusing on in there? Is that correct?
It is. What we've identified is a structure that we can follow for a couple of kilometers, and it's defined by a zone of really intense carbonate alteration and silica flooding and quartz veining, very similar to the main mines.
Now,
really,
oh, sorry, go on.
The thing that really excited us about this project at the very beginning was the scale of everything, the scale of the structure, the scale of the alteration. And so far we've been rewarded. We haven't drilled a hole into that structural corridor and not got gold mineralization.
And in most cases, those holes also carry high grade.
Yeah, and we've been able to consistently hit high grade, and the more drilling we've done, the better grades we've returned. And this year, which is by far our most aggressive campaign yet, it's returned not only our highest grade numbers, but probably also our most consistently high grade numbers. Going into this year, we had a couple of intercepts with better than 2 ounces. In the drilling so far this year, we've come up with 4 intercepts better than 100 grams over about a 2 kilometer long length. So absolutely, this project is beginning to look very, very similar to the early results that Rubicon came up with, that Gold Eagle came up with. This looks like a very significant exploration play in the Red Lake camp.
Well, I like those names because they were companies we got involved with as featured companies in our reports really early, and it has really been successful picks for us. In the case of Gold Eagle, they were ultimately bought out by Gold Corp after a couple of years of returning a lot of really great grades in their drill program. Rubicon is doing a similar sort of situation. One thing I was interested in, Scott, is relative to other geological structures like this one you're talking about on Newman Todd that's about 2 kilometers long. Is that consistent with these other big discoveries, or is it kind of unique? What's the story on that?
Well, if you take a look at the Campbell Red Lake mine complex, sort of the entire Campbell Red Lake mine complex, it's just over a couple of kilometers in length. If you look at the drill plans or drill sections and plans that Rubicon puts out with, their F2 zone looks like it's about a 2 kilometer long strike length. So what we're talking about is similar size structures to what are being mined in Red Lake and what Rubicon's F2 zone is. Now, these structures continue farther than that, but that's where the mineralization sits, is within about a 2 kilometer long length.
Now, as I watched the Rubicon discovery, some of the other discoveries, including Gold Eagle in Red Lake, what I noticed was that they kind of continued to follow the gold in that structure down to depth. That still remains open to do on the Newman Todd structure, correct?
Absolutely. So far, we've tested this thing to only very shallow standards by Red Lake standards. Our deepest hole intersects the zone at about 400 meters, but really the bulk of our drilling is shallower than 350 meters. By Red Lake standards, that's just scratching the surface. And people have asked us, well, why aren't we drilling any deep holes? Well, the reason we're not drilling any deep holes, I think, is highlighted by our last drill results. We're coming up with 7-ounce numbers closer to surface, and as long as we continue to do that, we're going to be happily drilling shallower holes. Now, eventually, we're going to want to follow these holes down to depth, and we expect that will be part of the program later on in this year or next year.
And that shallow drilling helps target where you go as you follow these things to depth, correct?
Absolutely. These things are shallow, and the idea is to find something relatively near surface and then follow it down dip. And in the Red Lake camp, like many of the Archean camps, the down plunge extent of the mineralization can be tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, how deep are they at some of those Red Lake mines now?
You know, I'm not even sure how deep they are now in Red Lake. Every time I look, they're deeper, but many of the holes that were drilled by Gold Eagle and by Rubicon are, 6 or 7 or 8 times the depth that we're drilling.
I see, okay. That puts it into good context. All right, well, why don't we move into some of the recent news from the Newman Todd project. Scott, a few things that has come up recently is you've had some results out from drilling. What want to talk to our audience about that? Let them know a little bit.
Well, our most latest result was the 7-ounce number over half a meter, which is, you know, those spectacular high grades that I think everybody expects that you'll be able to come up with in Red Lake if you have an ore deposit. And now we've certainly come up with those kinds of numbers. I think the really important thing from my perspective is not the super high grades, but the fact that we've now continuously been able to come up with holes that have hit gold mineralization. And the bulk of the deposits in Red Lake are made up of intercepts in the sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 to 15 gram range. So it's obviously nice to hit those 7-ounce numbers. But for me, the thing that really makes this work is that we're being able to consistently hit gold mineralization along the entire strike of this thing.
And in the same range as what they've seen in these other deposits in Red Lake, anywhere from a few grams all the way up to bonanza grades like those recent results, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And like many of the deposits, what we get is high-grade results within big, broad, lower-grade halos. And in our last release, I think if we average the gold grades across the entire structure, we end up with over a gram over something like 150 meters. So there's lots of gold within this structure. And I think that it's a bona fide new gold discovery for Red Lake.
Excellent. Well, you always like to have those emerging high-grade discoveries in Red Lake. They can be a focus of a lot of investors out there.
Yeah, and with 2 drills turning, we expect that we'll be able to come out with a batch of results about every month. And what we try to do is put out 5 or 6 holes at once.
I see.
We expect we'll be able to do that certainly up until the end of the year and through the beginning of next year when drilling will start up again.
So going forward, there's in the last news release there was also some mention of pending drill holes that are in the lab right now being assayed. How many was that again, Scott?
I think we've now got 19 holes that are in the lab waiting results. Okay,
excellent. And so those will come out as they're completed in the near term?
Yeah, I would expect within the next 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully we'll be able to come up with another batch of results, and then we'll be able to continuously do that. Every 3 or 4 weeks, put out a batch of results.
And as far as work going forward, what's the outline on that?
Well, we've got 2 drills turning on the property right now. We'll keep those 2 drills turning on the property probably until sometime around the middle of December. We'll break for Christmas, and then we'll go back with both drills turning again in January, probably mid to late January.
Well, it definitely sounds like everybody's rolling up their sleeves out there on that Newman Todd project, and the results definitely warrant give you lots of reasons to roll up your sleeves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the consistency of the results that we've been able to come up with this year have been very impressive, and I don't see any reason for that to stop.
Excellent. Well, you know, having a high-grade, one of my favorite places in the world to look for high-grade gold projects to talk about in my reports, in my on these shows, is Red Lake, Ontario. I love the area. Had a lot of really good success there, and really excited about this work that Redstar's doing out there. The next thing I wanted to talk about is your efforts up in Alaska. It's nice to have one high-grade project in a really well-known mining jurisdiction. Now you recently acquired these, Redstar acquired these projects up in Alaska. Why don't you give us an overview of those projects, Scott?
Yeah, what Redstar acquired is the bulk of an epithermal district up in Alaska, up in the Aleutians. There are 2 deals. One that we did with an oil and gas company that had acquired the mining properties through a takeover a number of years ago, actually in the late 80s or early 90s. And the properties really have been left dormant since then. So the last really work that was done on them was in the 1980s.
That makes sense, because the oil and gas company's not really too excited about a gold project in Alaska.
No, it was used simply as a vehicle to take a private company, a private gas company public, and then the mining assets really got put on the shelf and ignored.
I see.
And until we managed to acquire them, and it was a long process. It took us about 1.5 years of negotiations to acquire that ground. What we also acquired through a deal that we made with Full Metal is a huge land package surrounding these claims, and it really gives us control of an entire epithermal district. And it's a district that has historic production. There was 3 mines active at the turn of the century. They produced about 150,000 ounces of gold. They all ended in mineralization. None of the mines stopped because they ran out of ore. They all stopped mining because they hit what they called complex ore, where the ore transitioned into base metal rich. And at the turn of the century, they couldn't recover the gold, and they had no use for the base metal, so they stopped mining. So there's 3 historic mines there that all ended in mineralization, and there's been virtually no work or very little work done since the turn of the century.
Now, when you say epithermal field, what can you explain that a little bit to our audience?
Sure. It's a type of deposit that often occurs in clusters. They're structurally controlled deposits, so they occur along breaks, often parallel, so you can get more than one structure, and they occur in what we call vein fields. So there can be large areas, sort of 100-kilometer or hundreds of square kilometer areas that all have similar style of mineralization in them. And they often occur around the Pacific Rim. There's the Ring of Fire, as has been known, hosts a huge number of epithermal gold deposits and copper-gold porphyry deposits. And this project up in Alaska sits right along that structural edge. So it sits in a structural or geological area where you would expect to find these types of deposits. And in places like Argentina, there's companies that are exploring large land packages where there's multiple discoveries of mines within these districts.
I see. And what's the characteristics of the grades in these kind of systems or fields, if you will?
They can be extremely variable, but they can be very high grade. And one of the things that we really like about this Alaska deposit is there was a resource calculated in the 1980s, or from drilling that was done in the 1980s. And it was a modest resource of 250,000 ounces, but it averaged almost an ounce gold and 4 ounces silver, so extremely high grade. And these types of deposits can have these bonanza grades associated with them. And this Alaska district appears to be one of those.
Now, though those resources, that work was done prior to the introduction of National Instrument 43-101, correct?
That's right. These would be considered non-43-101 compliant resources because they were done prior to the implementation of it.
Sometimes
there are resources that we will need to go back into to bring up to 43-101 standards.
Yeah. Now, for my audience, there are not a lot of geologists and those types, and sometimes I think that that the general audience can get a little bit misguided when they hear words like non-compliant 43-101. And what I've always tried to help people to understand is that doesn't mean that the work wasn't competent or there wasn't there wasn't a good quality of work. There's been changes to the guidelines of how you calculate these things, but that doesn't in any way diminish the work that was done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's bad work that was done in the past, and there's extremely good work that was done in the past. And this resource that's non-43-101 compliant was calculated by a very reputable, very large engineering firm called SRK, which is a worldwide organization.
And we hear that name all the time in current compliant resources.
Absolutely. They've been around for a long time, and they currently are one of the big companies in resources.
So when you have a project that was the resource was calculated in the past like that, why don't you let our audience know a little bit about what a company does to bring it up to current standards?
Well, what we will do is we will drill a number of holes within the old resource area, and hopefully the numbers that we get will be comparable to the numbers that were got historically. And if that's the case, then there's the possibility that we'll be able to use the old drilling in a current resource. So what we'll do is we'll drill...
So you don't have to go back and redo all the past work. You sort of do confirmation type exploration drilling?
Right. If we can confirm that through modern day drilling that the results are very, very similar to what they got in the past, then there's a good possibility that you'll be able to use that drilling in a current resource and just calculate it with the new drilling as well. So what we're doing right now, and we just announced actually that the drilling has started on our Alaska project, is we've got a drill doing exactly that, that high-grade resource. And the interesting thing about that resource was there was a hole that was drilled 130 meters beneath it that hit 17 feet of half an ounce. So the resource or the mineralization currently or obviously extends much, much deeper than the resource does. And what we'll do this year is do some drilling to confirm the numbers that that they got in the 1980s and expand on them.
So basically what you have is you have, like, for lack of a better term, sort of a cap that was close to surface where most of the drilling was done, and then there was a gap in between that and then a deeper hole that was drilled that also hit similar kind of results. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a bunch of drilling near surface that they used to calculate a resource, and then there was one hole that was drilled significantly beneath it that hit the same kind of numbers but well beneath it.
So the part of the program is to confirm that historical resource type of work, and then also chase the structure to depth as well.
That's right. What our goal is this year is to kind of confirm and expand on that historic resource, both along depth and along strike.
Now, what kind of results, what kind of grades were coming out of that near surface results, and then the deeper stuff as well?
Well, the near surface results, the overall average grade was just under an ounce gold and 4 ounces silver, but there was intercepts up to hundreds of grams of gold and thousands of grams of silver. I mean, these types of systems can carry extremely bonanza type grades. Now, the deep hole that was drilled underneath it, we don't have the silver numbers, but it drilled 17 feet of half an ounce, so 16 grams over 5.5 meters. So clearly it's a very, very high grade vein system, and we really don't know what the depth extent of it is. And there's indications in the drilling that it's also extends along strike, both to the east and to the west. So our feeling is that the potential resource of the Shimigan area is much, 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 much higher than the old resource goes.
I see. Well, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of work to get done there.
Well, there is, and really exciting thing from our standpoint is what we've been talking about is the Shimigan vein, where the resource was drilled off in the 1980s. There's probably 30 kilometers of trend to explore, and there's historic drilling that hit numbers up to 120 grams over half a meter, 3 meters of 12 grams, 3 meters of 9 grams that haven't been followed up, that are 8 kilometers along strike from this Shimigan vein system. So this truly is a vein field, and there's indications that there's pretty good grades in other parts of it as well. So while we continue to expand on the historic resource, we certainly don't want to lose focus of the idea that this truly is a camp-style mineralization, and want to continue exploring the whole land package.
Now, this drilling that was recently announced, that's going to be mainly focused on what we talked about first, the resource and the expanding on that kind of drilling.
Yeah, the drilling, we hope that we'll be able to complete something like 16 holes this year, and it'll be focused on confirming and expanding that historic resource. Will
there be any sort of that regional exploration drilling, or is that not, that maybe for next year?
Well, we're hoping that we may be able to get a couple of holes this year into more regional targets. If not, it certainly will happen next year. We had hoped that we'd be able to get this program started about a month or two earlier than we are, but it took an awful long time to get the deal done with the oil and gas company and Full Metal. So what we'll do this year is we'll basically drill until the weather allows us to, and if we get a chance to get a couple of holes drilled into more regional targets, we will. Otherwise, we'll be, happily focused on expanding and confirming the historic resource.
Excellent. Well, I talk a lot in my reports about how bullish I am on gold and silver. The key reasons have to do with long-term supply chain for those metals, and my premise is that there wasn't enough exploration during the last few decades to meet the demand that's coming today from emerging and developed economies. And but my difficulty from someone who goes out there and does the research to try and find these kind of companies is I'm not having a lot of success finding a lot of new companies to talk about, so it's really exciting to have a company like Redstar with a shot at a high grade gold and silver type focused project.
Yeah, I agree with you, Al. I think that we're very bullish on gold and silver prices as well. And I'm a real believer that these high-grade targets that have been kind of neglected by the market for a long time are really going to be back in vogue. Really, for the last 20 years, the focus for mining companies and the market has been these bulk tonnage, bulk mineable resources. And people have kind of forgotten how economically robust these high-grade vein systems are. And I think we're starting to see those come back in style, and I think over the next few years you're going to see more and more and more of them. There really hasn't been a lot of exploration done for these high-grade vein systems for quite a while.
Well, Scott, another key focus of my report is always to try and help the investing community out there to learn more and understand the industry and the companies that they're involved with. And one of the great things I like about doing these interviews is talking to people like yourself. It gives a chance for experts or professionals like yourself to educate my audience, and you did a really great job there of telling us a little bit about what epithermal veins mean, also from an industry perspective that these high grade projects are becoming more in vogue, if you want to say that, and ultimately did a really great job in telling our audience about Redstar and their key projects in Red Lake and Alaska.
Well, I really appreciate the chance to talk to you, Al, and be happy to come on anytime.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you coming on as well, Scott, and I think on that note we're going to wrap it up, and definitely we're going to want you to come back in the future and talk to the audience again. Maybe even next time I can pop into the office with my camera and gear, and we can do it in person, face to face.
That sounds like a great plan. Great plan, Al. I look forward to it.
Now, if our audience wants to do some more homework, where would I send them, Scott?
Well, our website is redstargold.com, and it's got a fairly extensive list of our projects, and is currently the Alaska stuff is being updated as well. So check it now, but be sure to check back in a week or two as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot again, Scott. I'm going to let you go, and we'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Al. Talk to you soon.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
So, well, that was really great. Scott, and he was able to give us a really good rundown on Redstar and the work that is going on, the project overview, the recent results, and where the work is focused going forward. So, again, as Scott mentioned, a great place to do your homework, as we always recommend, is to check out their website at redstargold.com. So on that note, it's a wrap, and but before closing, I'd like to stress that this show and our reports are for information purposes only. We aren't making our buying or selling recommendations. It's important for you to do your own homework and speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. We're always trying to grow our audience, and any efforts you make to let your friends know about our website, our reports, would be greatly, and our shows would be greatly appreciated. I always like to send out some thank you messages because there's some groups that are really critical to us being able to put these shows on. We use YouTube.com as our primary website to produce and broadcast these shows. They have a great website for anybody that's interested in doing online shows, and we thank them for having such a great platform. Also, if you're watching this show on our website, you'll notice to my left and right that we have banner sponsors. Those banner sponsors are very important in us being able to do the work that we do. And if you want to do some homework on those companies, you just click on their banners, and they're directly linked to the company's website where they have plenty of information, and you can understand more about these companies. And of course, to you, the viewers, without you, we wouldn't have a reason to do the show, so thank you very much for tuning in. So on that note, just want to say thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you soon, and have a great day. Oh, by the way, you can find all of our work on our website at allenberryreports.com, and we keep everybody updated for free. If you subscribe to our email, there's a subscribe button above me on the website. Just fill out the information, and we'll keep you informed on all the work that we're doing. Again, check out our website at allenberryreports.com. We'll see you soon. Have a great day.